Hey everyone, this is Jim Neeb again from Jim Neeb Woodworks. Today is another beautiful day in the workshop, and I just got my new drill press in. It's a Powermatic PM2820. It's a brand new model. I got an email about 3 or 4 weeks before Thanksgiving last year from Powermatic that this was coming out. So I waited for the typical Black Friday sale that Powermatic has that was 10% off, and bought it from my local woodcraft here in Chandler, Arizona. And I think with the COVID restrictions in manufacturing stuff, they were a little behind. So I just got it in. It's the second week in January. This one's replacing my Powermatic PM2820-MT2. I've had that for about 5 years. There's a few things I don't like about that I'm hoping that they've resolved on this model. But the main thing on this is a 20-inch drill press. It's got a variable speed motor on it, so I don't have to mess with belts or anything. So it should change speeds very rapidly. It's got a few other nice features. So I'm going to review it and compare it to the PM2800B that I have. This is similar to the Nova Voyager digital variable speed drill press, but that one's also a 18-inch model, and it has some really complicated software. It's got a whole lot of menus and configuration and everything, and I just wanted something that I turn on and set the speed and start drilling holes, and that's what this is. So this is a full review of the tool. First, I got a whole bunch of mineral spirits and a bunch of rags, and I'm going to take this thing apart and wipe off all the goop that comes with it in shipping, and assemble it, and then we'll start the review. Okay, I'm testing the runout down here on the spindle, and you can see from the dial indicator it's about 1/4 of a thousandth, so that's pretty good for a drill press. Right now I'm testing just below the chuck on a stainless steel rod. I don't know how precise this rod is. That's why I'm measuring it right at the output. You can see there's about 1.5 thousandths, maybe 2 thousandths of runout in the chuck, and I can visibly see the chuck itself with a little bit of variation. So now I'm going to replace the factory chuck with my precision keyless chuck and see if this improves at the output. Okay, I just installed my Llambrich chuck. This is a nice keyless chuck. It was about $250, so it's a pretty good piece of hardware. I had this one on my PM2800B. The original chuck that came on that was keyless, and it was a piece of junk, really. Powermatic was nice enough to send me a regular keyed chuck to replace it when I called them. Apparently they had a lot of issues with that keyless chuck. But that was a keyed chuck that they replaced it with, and it was okay. But again, I like keyless, so I had bought this one a while ago. So now I'm going to test the runout. I just installed this on the new 2820, and we'll see what the runout is with that same. Okay, now this is the Llambrich chuck with that same steel rod measured just below the chuck again. So you can see now we're about at 0.5 thousandths of runout. So most of the runout on that original one was due to the chuck, and now I'm almost as good as the spindle itself, but 0.5 thousandths on a drill press, I'm pretty happy with that. So here's how I adjust these markers. I in this case I took a piece of 2-inch thick cherry and did a precision machining on it with a joiner, so it's perfectly square. So it's sitting on here vertically. Then I drew this line. Let me turn off the laser. I drew a line down the back side here that square to the edge, and then I got it set right under a small drill bit. It's having a hard time focusing. Right under a drill bit where the drill bit is half over the edge of the wood, and it's lined up with the pencil mark here. And so that's my center mark, and I want the laser beams to land on that. Both of them need to land on it and be perfectly parallel with it all the way up and down, and then theoretically it should make a cross any point up and down where the drill bit is going to be, no matter where the how high the table is set. And so you can see they're off right now, and these are adjusted by turning these two screws. There's one of these lasers on each side, so each side has a crosshair. So what I'm going to do is block off the one right here on the other side, just so I can focus on this one at a time here. So if I turn one of these screws, you can see that makes it move sideways, and the other one kind of changes its angle. You can see it sliding side to side. So you have to kind of mess with both of these until you get it lined up on the line all the way from top to bottom. In this case, I have about an 8 or 9 inch wide board, so it makes it pretty accurate because I can get the angle right. And that was one of the hard things before with the other drill press, to get these lined up. That's pretty good right there. So now I'm going to take the tape, cover up this one, go around the other side of the table, and do the same thing. Yeah, I'm going the wrong way there. Kind of get it so it looks vertical first, and then swing over the setting for the width, and that was a little too much angle again. Oops. It's hard to tell which way you gotta go with these. This is one of the things I didn't like about this. It's kind of a finicky mechanism. Okay, I have both beams aligned up very nicely on that line. Now you can see one of them actually has a kind of a second shadow beam off to the side. I don't think that's going to matter much. I won't really see it, but you can see now I have the laser marks. Actually, I'm getting a funny reflection off the, we'll use this instead. So now I got a nice clean X there. Okay, now everything's aligned. I should note that I had to go back and double check the perpendicularity of my table with respect to the quill. What I did was I put that 1/2 inch steel rod in the chuck and squared up the table with that coming out of the axis of the chuck, because my initial laser adjustment did not align very well at the bottom of the quill's travel versus the top. And when I went back and checked the square of the table, sure enough, the table was off. And what I found was that the main nut underneath that holds the table tight was not tight enough yet. I thought it was, but it wasn't, and it had gotten bumped out of square. So I re-squared it, then reset the laser, and now I'm going to test it. This was my last attempt. I had to adjust the table one more time. So now at the top of the travel, it's pretty well aligned where the crosshair is with the bit. And if I bring the quill down now with the table adjusted low, it's not perfect, for sure. I'd say it's about 1/8 of an inch off at the very bottom of the 6 inches of travel. So what that means is my quill axis still isn't perfectly perpendicular to my table. It's kind of a pain to set this up. With my experience with these laser markers is it's almost impossible to get them perfect, and they don't stay there either. These look like the same mechanisms that were on the PM2800B, so I'm going to leave it at this because for the most part these are just rough guidelines anyway. I would never drill based on them. It's kind of just to get things close, and then I'd still, if I want a precision hole, I'm going to use the brad point tip of the bit itself, or the bit if it's just a regular twist bit, to make the final adjustment according to my marks. Because like I said, these generally don't stay put long enough for me to trust them that well. But anyway, so these aren't much or any better really than what was on the 2800. It's the same mechanism and seem to be just about as finicky as the old ones. As far as lights go, you can see this is the PM2800 and this is the work light on the 2820, the new one. So they both have a front and rear light, but the ones on this new drill press are much brighter and flood the whole area much better. And I really appreciate that. As I get older, it's harder and harder to see. So this definitely a superior set of lights. This table is about the same width as the one on the older drill press, but it's about 1 inch deeper, so it's just a little bit bigger. But it has this nice cast iron insert. You can see here the edge of it. That can slide out, and you can put Powermatic makes a couple different insert options, but it comes with this cast iron one. Has nice leveling screws underneath to adjust that flat with the rest of this table, and I measured the flatness of this table. It's very good. You can't see any air gap under a straight edge, corner to corner and side to side, so very easy to adjust. One thing that I was not impressed with was this was the original center insert in place of this aluminum plate. It's not flat at all. You can see it's got a pretty large gap, and it's just generally kind of a piece of junk. So I took a piece of 3/8 inch aluminum plate and made my own plate in there. You could use, plexiglass or just a piece of MDF. In fact, it would be much superior to this warped piece of flimsy plastic. And a lot of times those end up to be sacrificial pieces anyway, so why not just use a piece of 3/8 MDF? It would be flatter and cheaper anyway to replace. So this one here is going in the junk where it belongs, and I'm just going to use this aluminum plate for now. One thing to note with these two is the size of the base. The one in the old PM2800B is about the size of base that I've had on most of my drill presses, and it's okay and everything, but the one on the new 2820 is much wider. It's probably 3 or 4 inches wider, and maybe a little bit deeper front to back. But this thing, when you shake the head on this, it doesn't rock around or move. This thing is really rigid, whereas almost all my other drill presses, they have a little wobble to them just because that base is a little bit smaller. And so this thing is, I would say, substantially more stable. Not that that really matters that much for a drill press. It's not like they're going to tip over anyway, but it's kind of nice to have it really sitting there and not not have to shim it up and try and get it to sit still for you. So the old Powermatic is a variable speed sheave type of drive, where you crank when this is on. You crank this crank to change the speed, and it takes forever. It got kind of annoying. I had a Delta model before this drill press, and it was the same kind of variable pitch sheath, but it took like a half a turn or something to make the full range of change in the speed. This one takes, I don't know, 15 turns at least to go from one end to the other. So it was kind of annoying to keep changing that. And it had a nice digital readout. One of the annoying things is when it's under 1,000 RPM, it has this 0 in the front. I wish that would blank out instead, but you know, it's 0, 800 is hard to read. It looks like all zeros and stuff. It's you can see it scanning on the camera, but it doesn't actually do that to the naked eye. The new one has a 2-range switch here. It's actually a gearbox inside. I'll take this apart and show the insides later, but easy to switch from low to high. For me, I'll probably always use it in the low range. The same readout, but now it's a digital variable speed motor, so instead of changing the transmission, you know, the belt ratios, it just simply changes the frequency of the motor driver, so the motor actually spins at a different speed. So I like that better. I like the toggle switches better up here for the light and laser versus these push button switches, just a little easier. And the other thing they did was on the old one here, you had to pull this kind of like an EMO switch to turn it on. It was, I don't know, a little bit annoying. The new one has that original safety switch, but it's got a nice on-off button here. That's a little bit more convenient. I don't know, the other one works, but I like that simpler switch. So I like the controls a little bit better. And then the overall quality of the Quill, you know, the gear mechanisms, the bearings on it, and everything, it's definitely, you know, better built than the other one. Just a little more heavy duty. I think it's a little smoother. The pull handles on here are probably an inch longer or so. And then it's got a totally different stop mechanism here. You basically turn this to where you want it to stop. Like if I want it here, I just simply spin this to this spot and then lock this, and now it stops there. And then if you want to make it turn just a little bit more, you would just loosen it and turn it to where you want it, and it locks again. So I don't know that it's easier than the old traditional one here, you know, with these top and bottom adjusters. It's a little bit more precise, I think, because you can make quick and accurate adjustments with the indicator here. There's a little graticule and markings on here, but it's probably not vastly superior. It's a little bit nicer maybe. I took the covers off of both of these drill presses, and you can see this is how this one changes speed. It's basically changing those pulley ratios by moving that center pulley to the left or to the right. So it's efficient. You know, it works well. I've used this drill press a lot. The belts are in great shape yet, so there's nothing wrong with it. My only complaint was just the number of cranks I had to give it to make the adjustment. And now this is the 2820. You can see it's a DC motor, and you know, there's a whole control board in here to create the DC voltage and stuff to drive that. And then it has this transmission, 2-speed transmission gearbox in here. So this is a direct drive all the way through. It's all gears in here. You can see a nice cutaway on Powermatic's website. You got the gear shift lever here that basically switches that. So you have 2 ranges, and then the rest of the speed within the range is all controlled via the speed of the motor. So my one concern with this is some motors have a constant torque, like a CNC spindle, for example, with variable speed. And the problem with that is essentially you're losing horsepower as you slow it down. I suspect this one is not that way, or it would not be able to handle, it would not have the torque to handle really big bits at low RPM. So I think this has feedback on it to keep the speed up and everything, and apply more voltage as needed. So we're going to see if that's actually true, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of the two drill presses, drilling a 3-inch Forstner bit through some wood and see how they handle some hardwood with the same bit and at a low speed, to see if there's any issues. These are both rated at 1 horsepower, so you know they theoretically should do the same job just as well if everything else is equal. Okay, this isn't super scientific, but I'm just going to try to drill a 3 1/8 inch hole pretty deep into a log of old dried acacia at around 450 RPM as best I can set it, and you know, try to apply the same pressure and stuff and just see if there's any noticeable or huge change in RPM over the, you know, while it's being loaded. So first is the Powermatic 2820B test. Okay, you'll notice that in the early going, it actually started slipping the belt a few times. And this is something I've noticed with this drill press before, is that when the belts are cold, they'll slip at lower RPMs like this, especially under high torque loads. So it would stop and completely slip. But once the belts start to warm up, I was pushing pretty hard for the last 3 inches of stroke there, and it did not slip at all there. The RPM setting with no load was 450 RPM, and it was dropping to about 400 when I was loading, even at the end there, but it was not slipping. We're going to turn on the 20. It's a little easier to get the exact RPM you want just because it is a digital control with internal feedback. So the other one's just trying to get a belt tension approximately right, and that's going to change with temperature and load and all that. So let's see how this one goes. Well, that was interesting. So This one also loaded down and slipped. You saw instead of slipping, this one has an overload protection in it, and you saw the error message up there. So if you overload the motor on this one, it'll automatically stop and throw an error, and you just simply turn it off and turn it back on again, and it'll start over again. I think the sapwood in this log is actually much harder than the heartwood. At least both drill presses had a lot harder time cutting. I noticed I pushed both of them very hard once I got into the heartwood, and they both had no issues there. So on the previous drill press, it may have been more just getting into easier wood to cut versus the belt warming up. So they both basically struggled with the first inch or so in this sapwood. You know, the other one slipped and locked up versus this one basically being overloaded and shutting down itself. So in my mind, both of them have about the same torque capability for different reasons. But I you know, try to push on the handles about the same on both of them as best I can. So I would say this is they're both equivalent as far as trying to drill a really big hole in this is very hard wood, by the way. It's very dry. This acacia is very dense and hard. But I would say they're both equivalent. So the 1 horsepower rating seems the same, and the fact that this one's a direct drive DC motor didn't seem to hamper at all. So it still can develop the same amount of torque as the other one. So that's good. And I like the fact that it has an overload protection. So instead of just sitting there and spinning and burning up a belt like the other one, or in this case maybe burning up the motor or something, it'll just simply shut off when it's being overloaded to protect itself. I want to give a shout out to this Llambrich chuck too. As you notice, I used it on the 3 1/8 inch drill bit test. This chuck I've used for probably 2 years now, and I have yet to have it slip on me on even a really large bit like that. And I've been woodworking for a long time, and almost all of my big bits have slip marks on them where, you know, at some point one of my keyed chucks didn't grip the bit well enough, and at some point it slipped. This chuck I only hand tighten. I don't use it. Does, as you can see, it has slots and a supplied wrench when you buy it. I never use it. I hand tighten this, and it has yet to slip on me. It's yet to stick on me. It's just great. You can see the runout test on this compared to the stock chuck that came with this drill press is significantly better. You know, but yes, it costs $250 too, so you get what you pay for. But if you really want a good chuck, you know, this is a good option, and so you can buy them on Amazon or eBay and just you know, replace your old one. I definitely have liked it. Okay, so that's the end of my review. So I think in summary, the things I liked better about this is obviously it's larger size. You know, it's a 20 inch versus 18. What that really means is, you know, 10 inches from the stem to the quill instead of 9, because the drill presses, they always double the size from what the real important distance that you care about. So it's bigger, it's quite a bit heavier, it's got a more substantial base, the table's a little bit deeper, the table is more flexible, it's got some, you know, the removable plate. You can actually remove it and clamp a longer piece in here vertically and end drill. I think the controls are better, they're simpler. Overall, I think I guess the design and the machining are a little bit better. I think it's a little bit nicer finished machine. I don't know if Powermatic worked on their manufacturing on this model versus the old one or what, but it's a little bit more refined. The only thing that I really would complain about from, say, a quality perspective was the insert on the table. The sacrificial insert was just, you know, a piece of cheap molded junk, really. But, you know, it is a sacrificial piece, and most people are going to end up ruining it sooner or later with an oops and replace it anyhow. And, you know, honestly, a piece of MDF works in there just as good as anything. And you can replace it with anything, and it's got leveling screws on it to make it nice and flush. So I don't really consider that a big deal. You know, I'd rather just see them have a piece of black painted MDF. That would have been a more honest option, I think. Not honest, but just better. The lasers are the same thing that's on the last one. They're okay. They're just, I don't, like I said in the review, you don't really use them that much anyway, I don't think. The motor is definitely as good as the other one. I've used this at high speeds to low speeds now, and does everything you want a drill press to do. It goes fast enough to do high-speed drum sanding if that's what you want to do. It's got enough torque to do some really big hole drilling here. It's got a full 6 inches of quill travel like that one. So all in all, I think it's a good upgrade to the other one. So now the question is, do you want to spend $2,000 on a drill press? That's a lot of money for sure, just to drill holes. Yeah, you can go to Grizzly and buy one that has the basic power, the 20-inch size and everything for about $1,000 with shipping and everything. You're going to be changing belts, positions. Pop the cover out, change the position every single time you want to change speeds. You don't get the 6 inches of travel. It's only like 4.5. And then, obviously the controls and just the general quality of the machine are significantly lower and something like that. But if that's your budget and that's what you are okay with, to get the job done, that's where I started out too, 20 or 30 years ago, is Grizzly and Harbor Freight kind of stuff. Then compare this to, say, the PM2800 or the Nova drill press that's similar. Those are $1,600 and $1,700. So the question for me is really, if I got $1,500 to spend on a drill press and I have, the choice of $1,600, $1,700, and $2,000, I'm gonna take this one hands down, because overall it's a better in most categories, I think, compared to the Nova. The software in that, like they literally have menus and a lot of configuration stuff. I don't want the drill press to tell me what speed I need to run and have to go program the material and the bit size and all that in there. I just want to set my RPM and go. So to me, this has all the features that you need and not a bunch of extra whiz-bang junk. But I haven't used that one either, so it's probably a really good drill press. But I would spend the money on this one if it were me, and I would spend the money on this one over the old Powermatic models as well, just because I think it's quicker to change speeds, and overall, controls and stuff are better. So if you like this review, let me know. If you want to see reviews on other Powermatic tools, most of my shop is the bigger Powermatic tools. I can go through and review some of the other ones as well. So let me know what you think, and if you have any questions, let me know, and hit subscribe if you liked it. Thanks.